Aaron Torres joins us from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast and Fox Sports Radio. AT, what's going on? I missed you last week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I did go to Memphis one time, drove through to get to Ole Miss. The only one of the few SEC cities I've been to is Oxford. But I heard a lot of Memphis talk coming in. Beautiful airport, beautiful drive to Oxford. Penny Hardaway might get a big recruit today, but that's all I really got on Memphis, Phil. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to start there. I mean, is the impossible going to happen? I mean, are they going to get Jalen and Bates in the same class? A 1-2 punch. I
thought you were going to say, is the impossible going to happen and Penny Hardaway is going to get to an NCAA tournament? But, no, I'm kidding.
Come on.
No, Memphis fans get so mad at me. I mean, it's like the track record kind of speaks for itself at this point. I mean,
no, it does. I'm more of a realistic than a lot of people.
To answer your question, it's crazy. It's crazy. So Jalen Duren, so it's interesting, right? Because both of these players are still technically in the class of 2022. Amani Bates announces a few days ago he's going to reclassify. Jalen Duren announces a Final Five. Jalen Duren's the number one player in the class of 2022, and the assumption is he's going to come down to 2021, kind of like Quinn Ewers play this year. In the case of basketball, it's a little different because this will allow him to get to the NBA a year faster. And so it's fascinating. Everything seems to be trending there, and it's crazy because, I heard this rumor about 10 days ago that both of these players would not only reclassify but play at Memphis this coming season. I didn't understand it because just with the way the calendar is structured, Amani Bates, which is the number 2 player in the class of 2022, would not be eligible for the next NBA draft. This other kid would. So I never really understood how they would both end up there, but that appears to be where this is headed. And I'll say this, I was talking to somebody that's really plugged in college hoops the other day. Penny Hardaway, he said that year that he had James Wiseman before James Wiseman left. He said, I want all the smoke. Well, you get the top 2 players in the class in August for this season. You're going to get the smoke, Penny, and we'll see if he can deliver. But just a fascinating topic, Drew, to see if this ends up playing out the way it is. By the way, that kid, Jalen Duren, will commit today. So that's the crazy element of all of it.
6:30 Central Time, I believe, right?
Well, Aaron, I saw that he's down to a Final Five, and I mean this doesn't involve Arkansas, but this involves something we've discussed quite a bit leading into student athletes being allowed to profit off the NIL. There was all this talk that the G League or this professional league for kids coming out of high school, or maybe the Australian Basketball League would be the quote unquote end of college basketball. Well, now NIL, Duren himself said with NIL, that changes the equation completely for him, and I imagine it does for quite a few other possible incoming stars in college basketball.
Well, what it does is, Phil, in my opinion, it gives you all the benefits of college basketball, and the biggest benefit is the exposure. And you could sit here and say, nobody watches college basketball until March Madness. Trae Young talked this playoffs about, he was on national TV 30 or 40 times at Oklahoma. Until the playoffs this year, he was on national TV once or twice a year with the Atlanta Hawks. And so what it does is it accentuates all the best parts of college basketball, and it sort of eliminates the worst part, which is money. Now, is Memphis or Kentucky or whatever able to pay what the G League is? I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever find out the exact answer to that. But, Quinn Ewers seems to think that he is going to make $1 million before he ever takes a snap as Ohio State's quarterback. So I don't think it's inconceivable to think that Jalen Duren or Amani Bates or any of the top basketball players going forward can't expect a lot of money. And so, Phil, it's just another fascinating element. Now, look, from the basketball perspective, there are these alternatives. I think there's always going to be players that just say, I really don't want to go to school. I really don't care about school. But I think it makes it harder to justify when you look at the fact that the exposure that college basketball gives, the exposure that ESPN, CBS, Fox, the NCAA tournament, conference tournaments, it's just unbelievable and it's unmatched. And I think for the G League on the flip side, I think now, they have a couple questions to ask. Do we want to keep doing this? And if we do keep doing this, how do we it's actually turned into the opposite. How do we counter college basketball? How do we get more exposure for these kids? Because, we all watched the NBA draft the other day, and I don't think unless you're a diehard or a diehard basketball fan, you really know anything about the 3-4 kids that were drafted out of the G League program this last year. So it's a total game changer because, like I said, Phil, it basically NIL takes out the worst parts of college sports that everybody always complained about, while also kind of accentuating the best parts as well.
Yeah, and with the NIL, and something that I've seen a lot of people, a lot of fans on Twitter that are complaining about guys going here, guys going there, and saying that they're never going to be able to compete because their local businesses won't shell out the money. And am I wrong in thinking this, but most of the big NIL deals have all been national type of companies. It's all been off of social media advertisement. It hasn't really been that car dealership or that restaurant that now we've seen some of those, but that hasn't been where the big money is going to come from. So does actual region and area of companies around really matter when it's mostly national money?
That's a great point, Drew. I think with Quinn Ewers, it's obvious that's the case. With Bryce Young, Nick Saban's talked about it. I think I saw a report from ESPN that said most of it's national. Obviously, with the female athletes, whatever the gymnast name is from LSU, it's the same there. I do think first of all, it'd be interesting to see if Jalen Duren chooses Memphis. It'll be interesting to see if he ever talks about name, image, likeness, and if he talks about what kind of opportunities were presented to him by Memphis specifically. Now, I bring up Memphis because it goes without saying that, one of their big benefactors, FedEx, is right in that town, and I think most people believe that, FedEx can basically do whatever they want to help Memphis Athletics if they're so inclined. And so if Jalen Duren chooses Memphis, one, I'm genuinely curious about, how much he says name, image, likeness contributed to his decision. It's interesting because in his case, he has said over the last probably 8 weeks or so since it became clear that he was going to reclassify, that name, image, likeness wasn't his number one priority, that it was how to best develop for the NBA, and the addition of Larry Brown on the Memphis staff has certainly, helped Memphis's pitch along with Jalen Duren, and along potentially they might be hiring Rasheed Wallace here in the coming days if you're to believe reports. So it'll be interesting, I just think, because one, does he say that name, image, likeness has anything to do with his decision? And then two, what we find out about what was offered to him or what he accepted or whatever. But you're right, Drew. I mean, so far it's been the national stuff. It hasn't been the local stuff. And I'll still say in general, I still believe that at the end of the day, most of these elite high school players, they're going to pick the places that are best going to prepare them for the pros. And usually those are the places that name, image, likeness is going to, be effective. Like you're not going to go if you're the Ohio State quarterback, you're not going to go home hungry at night. You're not going to be rubbing nickels together to pay the bills or whatever. And it's the same with Alabama. It's the same with Kentucky basketball. It's the same with Duke basketball. So I'm curious, but it's a great point by you. It's a great point.
So last thing to touch on here with you, AT, so we got football season coming up. It's always a season somewhere in college sports, but you know what it is now, 24/7 for the unforeseeable future is rumor season.
Realignment.
And you referenced it in your more recent Aaron Torres Sports podcast about the rumors coming out of Florida State and Clemson that they reached out supposedly to the SEC. Both schools said we didn't do that. I know, Mark Ryan is someone that's very respectable who broke this rumor, but, your point, and this is exactly true. This is not the first rumors to come out since the whole deal with Texas and OU started as rumor and then became reality a week later. So this is just another thing we have to get used to. Sooner or later, though, these rumors, some of them turn into reality.
Well, Phil, I think there's a lot of layers to this, and thank you for referencing the podcast. I really, if the Amani Bates news hadn't happened, I thought that was the topic that was really going to be the biggest story of the week, which is, a few things. One, I think with the Texas-Oklahoma stuff, I think last week was the sticker shock of, oh my goodness, this is really happening. Texas and Oklahoma just asked out. The SEC just voted them in. This week was kind of everybody picking up the pieces. And so, what I think is interesting is, one, I believe the rumors because, as you said, so as an example, Mark Ryan does pre and post game, at Clemson. I mean, his sources at Clemson, I guarantee, are better than anybody at the national level. Now, might somebody have a better relationship with Dabo? Maybe, but his sources at that place are better. In the same way that, Phil, if you say something's going down at Arkansas, I believe you in a way that I'm not going to believe any national writer because I know you're on that campus every day talking with people, all that kind of stuff. And so I believe all these rumors because how they're coming out. I believe all these rumors because everybody that's not in the SEC and Big Ten right now are trying to figure out, hey, what are those two conferences' next steps? How can we make sure that whether we're an individual school, a group of schools in a conference, how do we make sure that we don't get left behind? But what's also crazy about this, Phil, is that I don't think there's any one thing that brings the rumors to an end, right? Like you go back 10 years ago, once Texas decided, okay, we're staying in the Big 12, we're not going to the Pac-12, become the Pac-16 or whatever. Everything basically at that point kind of fell into place. Texas A&M went here, Nebraska went there, but once Texas decided to stay, like everything stabilized. I don't think there's that one thing right now because, again, nobody knows what the next 5, 10, 15 years looks like. Now, maybe the ACC contract's too airtight. Maybe nobody can get out of it. Maybe the SEC doesn't want to expand. But I'm telling you, man, whether anything happens or not, and no matter what anybody says publicly, behind the scenes, everybody that's not in the SEC right now is basically trying to figure out what is the SEC's next step. Are they staying at 16? And if they're not going to stay at 16, how do we position ourselves to make sure that we're in good shape for whatever the future of college athletics looks like? So it's crazy, Phil, and you're right. The rumors are not going to stop. I think Greg Sankey coming out and even saying we're staying at, I don't think that's going to stop anything, and it's not going to stop the other 8 Big 12 schools from trying to figure out what's best for them. It's not going to stop the Pac-12 from trying to protect itself. So this is not something that just because we reach a certain day or time that we're automatically going to go back to normal. I don't think this is slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, it's going to be a long time until I think everybody can be at ease that where we are now is where we're going to stay. Aaron, real quick before we have to let you go, we are out here at Hardee's in Springdale giving people a chance to qualify to win Chiefs and Cowboys tickets this season by eating a third-pound burger in 90 seconds. You think you could do it?
How big is it?
It's a third pound.
Fully dressed, though. You can't take any of the things
Tomatoes,
you don't like off of it.
Onions, lettuce.
In 90 seconds?
90 seconds.
I mean, I feel like I could, but if I could, then it would be a dumb question to ask. So I think I could, but I don't feel great about it. It's like asking me, do I think the SEC is going to stick at 16? I think so. I don't feel great about it. That's kind of how I feel about this burger. It sounds like something I could do, but if it was that easy, then everybody would do it.
That is true. We've had people succeed already.
I'm basically the Florida State and Clemson of the burger world right now. It's like, yeah, sure. We want to go to the ACC, yeah, but we want to go to the SEC, yeah, but does the SEC want you? It's got to work both ways. So I guess I'm the Clemson and Florida State of the burger world right now.
I love you too much, AT, to compare you to ground meat, but I'll leave it there. Appreciate you, man, and your thoughts and your podcast. Of course, Aaron Torres, host of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast and on Fox Sports Radio with us most Fridays. Have a great weekend, AT.
We'll see you next week. I'll be here, guys. Thank you.